Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Reish Chof Daled. Yesterday we spoke about the various brachas, about seeing Avodah Zarah, seeing places that were Bovel that was uprooted, Nebuchadnezzar's house, the Gover Rayas, etc., etc., and also Harei Chachmei Yisrael, the famous halacha that if you see one of the great Torah giants, you make the bracha shecholak mechachmos lirev, and then after you see the chachmei u'masailam, you make asher nosan mechachmos lebasav adam. So now we're going to continue this theme and talk about all the other types of brachas, and we're going to talk about brachas that you make when you see the king or similar sort of thing. So for us here in the UK, this is a very important halacha. What would happen if you see a king, which is very relevant to us, and you make on a queen? Do you make on presidents? Do you make a bracha on the president of America? These sort of questions. Okay, so says the Mechaba in Sif Ches, Reish Chof Daled Sif Ches, Al Malchei Yisrael, on a Jewish king, Omer Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Shecholak Michvoidei Lireov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has portioned some of the covet that is given to him, Lireov, for those who fear him. Val Malchei Umas Haolam, on a non-Jewish king, or king of the non-Jewish world, there's not a similar sort of chiluk in the Chachamim for Chachmei Yisrael. It's asher cholak mechachmasoi, and for the Chachmei Umas it's asher nosan mechachmasoi. Also, too, when it comes to the king, it's the simplest distinction. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Ches, Sif Kotten Yud Aleph, Val Malchei Umashma Gemara Afilu Summa. So the even if you don't actually see, so even if a blind person is there, sort of at the meet and greet of the garden party in Buckingham Palace, even a person can't actually see because Nebuch is blind, he still makes the bracha. Now that's based on a Gemara in Brachas. Remember the Gemara in Brachas that the entourage was passing and the min was there, and even though he was blind and he couldn't see, he knew better than the min when the king was passing because it was without pomp and ceremony. It was quiet, and that's Kodesh Baruch Hu. Anyways, the Gemara there in Brachas. So either way, the Summa can see. Now, when does he make the bracha? When he knows that the king is passing by. However, the Prima Godim says that if he has never seen in his life, not that he lost his vision, he's never had sight sad in his whole life, then he makes the bracha without shame v'malchus. And what does he make? If he makes the bracha of shecholak mikvoidei, but on the malchi umas haolam he makes the bracha shenosan mikvoidei. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Kotten Yud Beis, hashaltonim she'ein ol melech aleim l'shanas tivreiim v'don v'hari b'mishpat. Rulers who do not have the yoke of the king on them, l'shanas tivreiim, which means they haven't got they can't sort of be overruled. V'don v'hari b'mishpat. And they've got the power of capital punishment. They can kill somebody. Mavoich alem, you can make a brach on them. So if you've got a dictator who's got the power of life and death, and he can say off with your head, and he's not, there's no fetter to his power, you can make a brach on them. On sort of local dignitaries and things like that, then you would make without shame v'malchus. Now, based on this, the ability to have life and death, l'chora, that is the whole discussion whether you make a bracha on the president of the United States of America, because on one hand they haven't got the ability of killing people, of life and death. They can't just say off with your head. I remember once hearing or reading an interview that they interviewed Barack Obama after he had left the White House, and he said that he just felt frustrated in all his years as a president because he can't do anything. His hands are tied, he's fettered, etc. Yad melach and biyad Hashem, whatever the Lashon pasuk is. So therefore he hasn't got. On the other hand, he has got the capacity to wage war, and waging war to do certain missions and things like that. So the Ramesha Sternbuch in the Tshuva says that on the president of America you do not make a brach of Shecholak Mechachmasei. Sorry, Shecholak Michvoidei. Sorry, Shenosan Michvoidei for a non-Jewish president.
This president.
But Joe Lieberman. But Moshe Sternbuch says not to. But however, Moshe Sternbuch writes on the king, on the royalty in England, you do, and he makes different chilukim. Number one, that although the British royalty do not have power of life and death at all, in fact they have almost zero power. However, he says there's two things in their favor. Number one, that they've got to legally they've got to sign off on every new piece of legislation. Now it's a sort of a historical quirk, a nice sort of cute thing that they do, and technically the government can't pass legislation without the royal assent, I think it's called, and therefore they've got to sign off on it. So technically they have got a lot of power. I mean, it's very sort of procedural. It's a formality. It's not. But Lamaisa, that's the power they have. And number two, in their favor, as opposed to American presidents, it's hereditary. So it does pass on to the next generation, which is considered. And I think the third, and this is the key point, that it's the pomp and ceremony. It's the kvod, the kavod of the whole situation, and that's certainly still there. The pomp and the ceremony. Ad kedei kach, just by the way, when Queen Elizabeth died a couple of years ago, whenever it was, a year or two ago, on the day she died, Rabbi Bixenspanner spoke. I was in shul there in the Henna Das, and he spoke. And do you remember there was a period of time where she was lying in state before the actual burial for a long time, for like a week or 10 days or something. And it was she died, I think, on a Thursday, and he spoke on a Friday, and she wasn't going to be buried, I think, until the Monday week. It was like a bank holiday. They made a whole public holiday, and people could go, and people waited for a long time online. And he said something astonishing. He said that you can make the bracha if a person, and it wasn't in a church, so I think it was possible to go and see it. It was like just a big hall. And he said you can make the bracha without Shem v'malchus, right? But he said you can make the bracha asher nosen mikvede lebas v'dom without Shem v'malchus, even though she's dead. Because the whole maimed, the whole situation, the whole circumstance is so full of pomp and ceremony with guards standing and this and that. Okay, so without Shem Malchus is not a big deal, but the concept of making a bracha even though she's dead, because you make it on the kavod given to Malchus, that's the point. Even though he called her, she was one of the Chasidei Umas Olam, she was, but I saw you went to Yossi. Yossi's getting up from Shiva today. But he showed me a picture of when his father showed his yellow badge to the Queen, and she was like engaged fully, and she said, she's read about it, she's heard about it, but she's never actually seen one, and he was showing her, so anyway, that's that.
If you were to go to Russia, a real dictator who would take your head off.
Yeah, so according to this Mishnah Berurah, if he has done Vahirig and he's got the ability to administer assassinations or kill people, then it seems so. In other words, you're thinking Putin. Yeah, so l'chayra. I mean, he seems to have that capacity. You don't have to pick him up and hold him and shake. You just make the bracha. Okay, there's a couple of interesting things. He says some of these things in the footnotes. If you look at 15 and 16, in 15, if you look, what about a wicked king? So this is a very interesting one. What if it's a Melech Rasha? So again, because the whole thing is based on the kavod given to the king, it's not a judgment about his moral values. It's to do with the pomp and the ceremony. So if you look in the bracket, which is in the paragraph towards the bottom, Va'afal Melech Rasha, he says there at the bottom that Va'afal Melech Rasha kosav hakaf Chaim shemevarchim. Ochein al Kaiser Germania, however, he says on the German Kaiser, Shekeshabiki Yerushalayim, famously he visited Yerushalayim in the early 1900s. Hoira Hagan Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Sheloi Levarich, Kim Shageman Hem Zera Molek, Shekosav Boy Mochi Timche V'chein Dasagon the Stipler. So interesting. So on British royalty, the minhag is to make. And Jacobus used to do it, and others do it. Anyway, to make it. What about making on a queen? Yeah, does it have to be a male? Because the answer is that you can make on a queen. If you look at footnote 16, he says Mikan Chiach, because the Mishnah Berurah says K'sheyadeh HaMelech Oiva Mevarich, v'Mikan Chiach b'Shal Shuv Shevet HaLevi She'af Al Malka Mevarchim. Because you shouldn't gaze at women, and therefore maybe it might be inappropriate to gaze at the queen in order to make the bracha, but you don't have to actually see them. Even though the entourage is passing, if you know that they're there, that's enough. So just looking, that's okay, but gazing is the problem. But if even if they're not there, you can't. Even if they're not, they've got to be there, but you can't actually see them. That's sufficient. And for example, he speaks about, do you remember in the I forget exactly when it was. I think it was about 10, 15 years ago. There was some, I think it was some golden jubilee or something, where the queen had been queen for 6 years, about 10, whatever it was, and there was like a whole procession. There was a boat. I forget, they had a special name for it.
Flotilla.
A flotilla. That's right, a flotilla. And the flotilla was driving, was sailing down the Thames, and she was there. Now, if you're standing on the shores, you can't quite see. Maybe you could make out. It's quite far away, but it doesn't make a difference if you know that she's on there. And it's a various lefonov. That's according to this. That's sufficient to make a bracha. Okay, Seder. Let's carry on. So that is Sif Ches. Sif Tes. Mitzvah lishtadel liris malachim. Afilu malchim musayin. Amazing. There is a mitzvah to try and make every effort to see royalty in order that you can make the bracha. Even even seeing, let's say, British royalty, that would be it's a mitzvah to do it. Why? Because because it's kedei lahavchin, the Gemara says. Kedei lahavchin, because there's different pshatim what that means. But in order to get a smell of what real royalty is, I think Moshe Shapiro, when he came to London once, one of his talmidim took him to Buckingham Palace. He asked, do you want to see Madame Tussauds and the London Bridge and the London Eye or 1,000 other things? But Buckingham Palace he wanted to see. He got out of the car, he stood there for a while, taking it all in, and then got back in the car. Because he wanted to get a smell of what Malchus is. And that's the point. So there's a mitzvah lishtadel, Kadesha Yavchin, the Gemara says, in order that you can get a smell of what real Malchus, clap in Shemaim is. Okay, Sivkot Yud Gimel, Liris Melachim, Umuta Latame Betumah Shal Divrei Mipnei Kvodim. It's so important that a person can also be Matame in a Tumah Drabanan in order to see Malchus, Bein Malchi Yisrael, Bein Malchi Umas Oilam. V'chein Mipnei Kavod Habrias, Kagoin Leilech Lenachem Avelim. You're allowed to do things, for example, Kavod Habrias is pushed aside in order to be Menachem Avelim. Okay, Imraya Pam Achas Hamelech Lo Yevatel Yosef Milimadur. Okay, you've seen him once, you've seen it, finished. Imlo Shekol Chayil BeYosef V'Kol V'Gol Yosef. Unless the second occasion is even more grand, and therefore it'll make more of a roshim on you. But once you've seen it, you've seen it. You don't have to you don't have to do it every 30 days, whatever it is. Okay, Sif Yud. Haroya Bati Yisrael BeYishuvan. If a person sees Bati Yisrael, it could go in BeYishuv by Sheni. You see the residents of Klal Yisrael, lots of homes. For example, during Bai Sheni, Oime Baruch Atah Hashem L'Kenim L'Cholam Matziv Gevul Almona. Okay, now Rebbe Churban on Oime Baruch Dayan Ha'emes. Okay, so in the good times and in the bad times. Says in the Mishnah Sivkot Yud Aleph Bati Yisrael Pirush Bate Ashirei Yisrael Shemishavim B'Toikev Gvura. They're living, in with power and with wealth. So then you make a special bracha. Kugoyin b'yishuv b'ayasheni, Rashi says. V'ef shadavka be'eretz Yisrael of his man b'ayasheni kama. We're talking about b'ayasheni. Of his man hazeh, I feel be'eretz Yisrael like, but it's not nowadays. Not. I mean, to be honest, I was in Eretz Yisrael last week, and driving in the taxi towards Yerushalayim, and you see the sprawling suburbs of Yerushalayim. Your heart warms. So when the Mishnah Berurah says nowadays you don't make it for Eretz Yisrael, this is the early 1900s. What you see pictures of Bnei Brak, you see the sand dunes that is Rehov Rabbi Kiva in Bnei Brak. Now Baruch Hashem, it's a city of 200,000 Yidden. In Bnei Brak and Yerushalayim is nearly 1 million Yidden. So, but either way, I don't think you make the bracha nowadays. But maybe, who knows? V'yesh mefarshim kavonas Rashi tafilim him yushavim atza k'mo b'bayasheni. Even if then when yushavim atza k'mo b'bayasheni gam kein mevarchin, you still make the bracha. V'arif pirush Bati Yisrael b'Yishuv and Hainu Bati Knesiyish Mizbanim B'Zeichem. We're talking about shuls. V'chein no agoelim shein mevarchin ashari batim. We don't make it on residential homes. Kiyem ha'beis ha'knesses k'shirosa b'yofi ha'v'tikuna. You go into a magnificent shul, then maybe that would you can make the bracha. V'kosav b'li rabba de'ein chiluk ben Eretz Yisrael l'chusaris afilu b'zman hazeh v'prima godim etzadid b'zman hazeh tov v'varech baruch matziv gud almana b'lo shein v'malchus. Again, that's always the answer. Without shein v'malchus, you're pretty safe. Yud Aleph. Haroya bote ovdi kechovim b'Yishuvin. If you see houses of Avodah Zarah, again dwelling benachas, oime beis geim yisach Hashem, and b'churbon oime kel nekamas Hashem. When they're churban, you said HaKadosh Baruch was taking revenge against them. Yud Aleph, Sifkot Tesvov, Harei Bote, the Pirish Rashi Anal, Hainu Bote Kutim, Sheyeshim B'Shalva V'Hashket V'Ishe. According to Rashi's Pshat, you see heathen homes, they're sitting with serenity and Yishuv and Sheket and wealth. Well, Rif, Hainu Bote Tiflash Lem. According to the Rif, again, the Shitase is referring to their houses of worship. Okay, Yud Beis. Harei Kivrei Yisrael. A person sees, you go to a Beis Olam, a Yiddish Beis Olam, that's obviously written, as you go into Beis HaKvaros, you make that bracha. Says the Mishabur Tezayin, if there is only one kever there, someone just told me now, they were in near Rechov Yafin, near Mach Yisrael, they just stumbled across it. You've got the Imri Emes, the Ger Rebbes and the Pnei Menachem, I think. The two Ger Rebbes, they're buried in the old Ger Beis Medrash, which is literally just on the street. There's a little house and there's a sign out saying Kohanim can't come in. And it's, sometimes you have one kever. So even if there's one kever, Yesh Om She'ein Lo Mebracha Zu Ki Niskan B'Lashon Rabim, because the whole bracha was instituted Kivrei Yisrael, which is more than one. Okay, and last sif, Kol Birchas Hariyah. So you see it within 30 days, you don't make the bracha again. It says in the Shabur Yudzayin, you see the same melech. You see this king of England, and then you see the king of Denmark or whatever, then that would require a different bracha. And so too, if you go back to the same Beis HaKvaros, Omnom, Be'el Rabba, Seif Simon Reish Chafei Kosav, the Hamogen Avram, Ba'atzmai, B'Siv Kot Nutes, Shom Mashma, Dolos Rilei Hachi, V'am Pesach Tshuva, Masha Kosav B'Shem, Sefer Amudei Or, Ba'zeh. Okay, Pesach. All right, let's leave it there.